Founders, you are the most important investment in your business. The state of your mental health impacts your decisions in all areas of your business, from operations to talent acquisition to sales. And our guest is sharing outstanding advice and insights to help you build your mental wealth through a strong investment in your mental health. Stay tuned for the Startup Life live show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Startup Life live show. I'm your host, Ande, Lyons, startup coach to first-time founders. And I, after raising 4 businesses of my own, now help newly minted business owners sleep through the night by giving them peace of mind because, gosh, a new business does not come with instructions. Darn it all. Thank you for carving out time to tune in and up your founder game while cheering on a fellow founder. I really appreciate you showing up here. And for those of you watching the replay, please like the video and be sure to click on the subscribe button. Thank you. So I got to ask you, how's everyone feeling right now? This is the first day of the last month of 2020. And it's been a year filled with unusual levels of high uncertainty and challenges. And I'm wondering if you're feeling a little like this. Let's just take a moment and watch this. I gotta tell you, is that Startup Life or what? Oh, it always makes me laugh out loud when I watch that young boy out there getting slammed. It really can feel like our business. And now we're entering the holiday season, which can often bring up another layer of distress. And the next thing you know, you're looking at all this baggage, right? And you don't need to carry this baggage into 2021, okay? That needs to stay home or maybe resolve a little of these issues before we head into 2021. Thank goodness our guest, Anthony Ware, is here to help us navigate the murky waters of founderhood under extreme conditions. Let me share a little with you about Anthony. Anthony envisions a world in which we prioritize the mental health of founders and their teams with the same effort and resources as we do for revenue and operations. As the founder and principal of Aware Catalysts and Founder Mental Wealth, Anthony helps underestimated startup founders use their mental wealth and company culture to leapfrog business norms and create new generational wealth. Oh boy, we're going to learn a lot from Anthony. Will you please join me in welcoming this extraordinary man to the show? Hey, Anthony.
Hey, Andy.
So happy to see you.
Happy to see you. I'm still laughing from that video because it's funny because it's true.
It really is true. Oh my gosh. I feel badly for laughing out loud whenever I see it, but it's honestly, you just like, especially when you got whiffed that one time. Oh, it's... There's so many crazy moments in startup life. And I just want to welcome you not only to the show, but as I said earlier, the first day of the last month of this incredibly challenging year. And I want everybody to know we are streaming live right now on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Periscope, and Twitch, thanks to the oh so delicious platform called StreamYard. And for those of you tuning in live, please use this opportunity to expand your network. I mean, I don't know about you, but there's no way you can show up at a live event right now to network. And these live stream events are a wonderful way to meet new folks and find a new collaboration, share your LinkedIn URL, and gosh, you never know where your next collaboration is going to come from, right, Anthony?
True, so true.
And good, Nikki, I am so glad you were laughing your head off. It was so funny. And Nikki Pesquier, yes. And let me tell you, substantial depressive illness, this subject is of great interest to me. Thank you. Thank you. We all can fight this. We have different levels of sadness and depression, and managing it is, what we're going to be talking about today, and ways to, make it work. And I think this is the guy who helped me or wanted me to get my stream working last week. Thank you. Yes, it's working. Yay! On Twitch. It's the little things in life. Anthony, can I just throw this back up with Nikki, guys? I just want you to know all my branding here, Nikki Pesquier is the one who created it. She can do something for you in your brand, in your tone, whatever that looks like, and for you. And also amazing videos, how-to videos for Canva and all, MailChimp, HubSpot, all sorts of great things if you go to her YouTube channel. So I really wanted to take a moment, Anthony, and do a quick shout out for that. And also, Anthony, before we go diving into your extraordinary background, because Anthony's going to be sharing not only his startup stories today, along with his incredible advice for managing our mental health and building our mental wealth. But I want to throw it out to folks before we get started that today's topic and our conversation may trigger some painful moments and memories for you. So if you need expert advice, please consult a competent professional to help you. And asking for help is the best strategy for you and your business always, right, Anthony?
Yes. That's one of those lessons I hope you learned earlier than later.
I tell you, I have this great thing to just ask on the napkin. Really, I don't know, we tend to think like there's some shame involved with asking for help, but honestly, you would not let your child, if you were concerned about your 2-year-old or your newborn, you wouldn't hesitate reaching out to the pediatrician. You really need to do the same for your business. Anthony, please meet David. He's an extraordinary human, and he is a founder who has an incredible business that is making more places accessible when you are chairbound.
Phenomenal.
Yeah. Phenomenal. And David, one of the coolest things I think about you is, and excuse me for being a little naive on how these wheelchairs work, but you know what he does, Anthony? When he's at his networking events, he raises it up high. So you're not looking down, you're looking almost eyeball to eyeball with him. It's really cool. And he just goes to, back in the day before the pandemic, we go to all these great networking events that we have here and show up and just really show us what it was like to show up for your business. So thank you. And be sure to throw in any comments that you have, folks. During our conversation, Anthony and I are ready to dive in a little deeper to any topics around this topic, around mental health, because #mental health matters always, and especially as a founder, because you're going to get challenged, and you are being challenged with so much of what you don't know. Anyway, Anthony, there you were on payroll, as I like to say, right? Or sometimes innocent bystander, minding your own business, when an idea came in, popped into your head, and you said, oh man, I want to be an entrepreneur. And I know this was 12 years ago, in 2008, I think, when you decided, why not? I'd love to hear and have you share some of those stories, because they're very important for founders.
Yeah. So, really, I think the seed for me was planted when I was a kid. And 2008 was kind of I think the moment where, if you know about plants, there's a lot that happens before you see anything break the plane of the soil.
Right.
And for me, I grew up most of my life with my dad, raised by my dad, and with myself and my 2 younger brothers. And my dad had a side hustle at the janitorial company and worked for the post office. And so I saw like this salary job and entrepreneur kind of parallel paths throughout my life. And then the only reason I went to college and did all that was because my dad said, you're a Black man, get your paper, because that's important. I mean, it's something we have to do. It's almost a protection for us. But in 2008, I was working in commercial real estate. Just left corporate with CB Richard Ellis, worked for a boutique firm, and I had a phenomenal client. And she was working on actually cancer diagnostics, which was super cool. And we were talking over breakfast, like just talking about the business. And she said, Anthony, I know you like all the stuff about the business. There's this thing called management consulting. She's like, there's this, you get paid to share your ideas and give a plan of action, and then you can actually kind of walk away. And it's on the people that do the work. And so that was like it was over breakfast at La Peeps, downtown Indianapolis, 2008, where that conversation happened. And that was kind of the catalyst.
And and the thing about management consulting, a couple of things. First of all, you have to figure out what you're going to charge, right? Because you can put it to folks, oh, this will take me about 20 hours to do or 40 hours to do, but you need to fudge it a little so that it's worth your time and you don't end up working for $5 an hour.
Exactly.
But also there's times too when you say yes and you end up working out your understanding and deepening your understanding on the client's dime, right?
So true. Well, and that's the thing, like, you don't know. I mean, and this is back in 2008, there wasn't all this level of transparency on, what to charge and all of these things. It was still this kind of veil of secrecy and figure it out. And yeah, it was very interesting times. And I'm 45. So I was well into my career at this time. And there was so much I didn't know that I didn't know.
Right. And so you put out a shingle, everything went great, right?
Oh yeah. Perfect. Everything was phenomenal. Oh boy. Back in those times. Yeah. So the first, I did getting a client was easy. That was it because I just talked to the people that I knew, but everything else just kind of managing my books and doing taxes and contracts and was kind of a hot mess, and which led me into making a lot of mistakes. And on top of that, as we're talking about mental wealth and these things now, on top of that, I was looking through the world through the lens of make a lot of money equals stuff equals happiness.
Right.
So I was so focused on the money that there were so many red flags along the way that I missed, and these lessons.
Well, and folks watching, now or later, put a thumbs up in there if you have had that experience, a big mythology, right, about entrepreneurship. I'm going to make a lot of money. And, a lot of times it just isn't going to work that way for you. You're going to learn a lot. You're going to perhaps make some money, but you're going to make mistakes and you're going to trip and you're going to figure things out along the way. But, having a yacht and being the billionaire on the side, it just, this is why I always talk about how you have to be on purpose with your business so that it's about being fully expressed in your life and having a North Star from which you are steering your business in your life. Because if you don't have that, that's where you can really run into problems, because it then becomes all about the money and you end up hating what you do. How did you navigate all of that? Because you didn't have just one, you had a few businesses.
Yes. So I look at the business experience as much like finding a romantic partner. Sometimes you're in a great relationship. Sometimes you think it's great, but then it's not. And so for me, one of my initial consulting assignments contracts turned into starting a logistics company and having 4 co-founders, and which that is something you shouldn't have at all. So all these chiefs, and again, with the mindset of money equals stuff equals happiness, I allowed things to happen that I shouldn't allowed to happen. So I'm taking my responsibility on it, and that ended up with me leaving the company and just a hot mess, legal stuff and all these things. But instead of like checking myself after doing the evaluation of what lessons learned, I immediately jumped into another startup.
So no wonder you were laughing over the initial video I showed.
Yes. And so like having the other startup, there were some other things that like I learned some lessons, but ultimately that one ended, and that was a tech company as well. And fortunately enough, at that time, I had surrounded myself with enough good people to be able to pull me out. Yes.
As Arlen says, and if you haven't read her book, by the way, it's About Damn Time. Phenomenal book, but she has a chapter about lived experiences and how they're so important for our bigger work in the world. Mm-hmm. And so, you going through what you went through with these 3 startups right away, boom, 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 you went, okay, I can't do this. This is not sustainable. And from that, share with folks what you learned and how you ended up launching Aware Catalysts.
Great. So what I learned and what I realized is that, yes, I want to make a ton of money. Don't get it twisted. I don't necessarily care to make billions of dollars, but I have my number. But understanding what I want in my life first, and then like transitioning into like what I want for the business. One of I think the big lessons was aligning yourself with the right people. So choosing the right mentor, having the right peer group. One of the reasons why I was able to pull out of, or like start to turn things around in 2010 when everything crashed, was because I had developed a relationship with the founder of a company called Feel Goods. So Kyle Berner, and allowed me to come and work with his team. And at the same time, I had a mentor, John King, who co-wrote Tribal Leadership, and start learning about like the things around company cultures and values and positive. And so you get kind of this, I was in the crucible moment. There was a lot of good being poured in on top of me taking yoga teacher training and all these things. And so that was, I think, the seed in 2010 for Aware Catalysts, which started out focused on employee happiness and those kind of things. Yeah. And I've basically been iterative over it's been 10 years.
That's phenomenal. I just want to say hi. Hey, Steve Vilkas, you .connector, you. So good to see you today. How can founders self-advocate and self-regulate? It's so hard sometimes to say no, to ask for more, and to take better care. Ooh. So I think I'd like to sort of chat a little bit about that. What do you think?
Yeah. How can you self-regulate? There's a lot of talk about self-awareness and developing self-awareness. In order to do that, you kind of have to do it. And so when you talk about self-regulate, like do small steps, and not necessarily small steps directly related to what you're trying to achieve. So you hear the conversation about following your gut and following your intuition. Well, you have to practice that. So for example, if you're, COVID safe distance, you're out walking and you have this feeling to walk left or roll left and go left instead of right, follow that feeling, because ultimately it's the muscle of intuition and tuning into that internal monologue and voice that goes on. So when you talk about self-regulate, it's pick new things to do or different things to do to help you reconnect with who you are.
Right. And Steve, I can tell you this right now, no is a complete sentence. So it is a muscle you have to work on, though. You have to learn how to say no, because especially when you're so generous like you are, you're such a generous heart and soul in the world, and you love helping. And a lot of us, love to help folks. So we tend to say yes, but it's a little too often. So I'm thinking, Anthony, by putting in boundaries and being able to know what you're going to say yes to versus what you're going to say no. So having a real clear idea about what your focus is in your work in the world, or how you want to be in the world, it allows you to say, gosh, I'd love to help you, but it falls out of my bandwidth for what I'm focusing on now, and it spreads me out and dilutes me. What are your thoughts?
I totally agree. I think the hardest part of setting boundaries is honoring your own boundaries, because it's easy to tell somebody no, I don't want to do this, or hey, I want to meet on this day and not that day. But then you have to hold yourself accountable to that too.
Anthony, can you say that thing about the hardest thing about setting boundaries?
Yes. So the hardest thing about setting boundaries is for you to hold yourself to the boundaries that you set.
That's a stitch that on a pillow moment, everybody. I love that something. Seriously, we're laughing, but my gosh, understanding your boundaries is so important. Thank you, Steve, for that great question. Very thought-provoking. And yes, Nikki, you and I were old enough to have made a lot of mistakes. And so we make up, right? Oh gosh, as a 4-time founder, this is why I feel really confident in my ability to coach, because once you've made all the mistakes, it's all good. So you launched Aware Catalyst. And folks, I want you to know, when Anthony got through his 3 businesses, it wasn't like he still had a lot of assets that he was sitting on, right?
So I had maybe like $10.
$10. And you were living out of?
I was living in the upstairs laundry room of my friend's like 3-level house in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why, one of the reasons I did yoga teacher training was because I was like, all right, I did check myself and say, look, if everything goes sideways again, let me get a skill that I can do anywhere in the world, because I knew I wanted to travel the world. So I'm like, I've been a janitor. I mean, with my dad, and then in college, I've been a server, a bartender, and a semi cook, and even cleaned my friend's bar to earn extra cash for while my startup was going. So I'm like, let me teach yoga, because why not? and so yeah, it wasn't like, hey, I got like 10 grand, or I got 8 months of runway, personal cash saved up. No, not even close.
Yep. And you rose out of the ashes like a phoenix, because this was going to be your work in the world. And so having that lived experience best prepared you to help others set the boundaries and understand that their mental wealth is so important to their mental health. So let me ask you this, because we want to talk a little bit about mental wealth. What does it mean, and how does it tie into mental health?
Great question. And so I didn't coin the phrase mental wealth. It's actually been used in the broader sense when it comes to the mental health industry and field and articles. But I put it in the context for entrepreneurs, and especially for underestimated entrepreneurs and founders. So when it comes to mental health, everyone has mental health from the day you're born until the time you die. There's things that are good for your mental health and add value to it and add to it. And these are what I call mental wealth deposits. And the mental wealth deposits, just like you put deposits in the bank, accumulate as long as you keep putting more deposits. And then there's things that hurt or kind of withdrawals of your mental health, are mental illnesses, or something like, I don't know, a pandemic. and so when you think about it, it's much like you look at the ledger on a bank. I mean, it's the other side of the coin when we're talking about financial wealth, right. Because every decision you make is based on the state of your being at that point in time.
And folks, you hear that, you see evidence of founders who will sit down and 10 years later are an overnight success. Do they have any relationships left? How are they feeling? You're going to hear one story after another about the challenges that they face by hyper-focusing on their business and forgetting about taking care of self. And the self being your whole picture. Maybe you're not in a love relationship. Maybe you don't have pets or something like that, but there's got to be ways that you can nurture that important side of you, because by becoming hyper-focused, I imagine, Anthony, it's going to skew decisions that you're going to make for your business. Can you chat a little about that?
Yeah, I mean, and it's easy when you step outside of it and you look. So it's, if you are trying to work, there's hustling and I'll sleep when I'm dead. Well, no, when you're dead, you're dead. You're not sleeping. But as you're making this progress and trying to figure out your business, in order for you to be optimal, your optimal state, your best state as you can, you have to give your body a chance to do what it needs to do, whether it's flush out waste or reset, things in the subconscious. And the thing that's really tragic is when someone loses a lot of money, we make a big deal about it. But the only time we ever generally make a big deal about focusing on the state of our mental health is if someone dies by suicide. And then there's a big uproar of, oh, what happened? And then it's quiet again, especially in the United States.
Yeah. This is so important. That's why we're really going deep into this, viewers, because there is a entrepreneurship culture out there, which is pedal to the metal and do whatever it takes and don't give up, all of these messages, so that you as a founder can easily fall into this trap, right, Anthony, of not remembering to do the self-care and ways that I'd love to hear your ideas of ways that not doing the self-care can show up in the business.
Oh yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Ways of not doing self-care can show up in the business.
So, for example, your relationship with your team members can get compromised, I imagine.
Yeah, well, between that, your decision making, the clarity of your decision making, the clarity and quality of your decision making skills, the quality of your work, you actually just being physically able to show up to work. Right. Actually, a great example for me, and I'm just thinking about this, was I mentioned my dad earlier. He had the side hustle and the regular job. One day I came home when I was a teenager and he was in the hospital because it was like just pure exhaustion. It wasn't like a heart attack or stroke. It was like he just wiped himself out. So then, especially if you have family and you're an entrepreneur or you're taking care of someone, you have all these, everything is connected. I guess the point I'm trying to get to is there's this talk of work-life balance. And there's no such thing as work-life balance, because you have a life and then everything falls under your life. Right. So we may prioritize things depending, and making something a priority depending on the situation, but we have to be able to be at our best as best we can to do our work. And yeah.
And a lot of times you may find yourself looking at loved ones and saying, look, if you're not part of the solution, get out of the way. It's that kind of hyper focus that really starts taking a significant toll on your mental health, folks. And as you say in your bio, and I said earlier, putting your mental health right up there with how am I going to generate revenue? How am I going to scale with these operations, with these people in place? How am I going to get the traction I need? How am I going to raise capital? Your mental health. How am I going to stay healthy through all of this? Now, some of us don't need as much sleep as others, but we still have to put in some time to decouple from the world of our business, because it's all consuming. And I often talk about how it's like having a newborn at home. I mean, you're not going to be able to put the kid off to the side, okay? They need you 100%. Your business does need you, of course, but you still have to step back, and whether it's a spa treatment, yoga, go for a run, cook a really fun meal, whatever it is that distracts you and takes your mind off. Don't watch the news, though. Something that in a healthy way distracts you. Go out and volunteer. Serve some other folks in the world. I imagine that would build up one's mental wealth. Yes?
Oh, without a doubt. All of those, and giving yourself time to sit in times when you're having a crap day. Because I think oftentimes we as entrepreneurs like use work almost like as a numbing thing to numb us out from the angst and the things that are building up within us. Um, and I think it's exploring and being creative with the things you do, because what worked in March may not work right now.
That's really key. Yeah, I love that, something fierce, because we think something soothed and took care of us then, but you're evolving, and you're evolving at lightning speed, and you're having stuff thrown at you at lightning speed, and you're taking on and building. And what was hard to do a year ago, right now you're like, I'm really comfortable with that. I'm really confident about that, right? But a year ago you were like, ah. So it's the same thing in taking on new ways to build your mental wealth. Okay, Nikki, let's bring that up. What one thing do you ensure you do every day to keep your mental health bank account and mental wealth bank account full?
My goal is to do it every day. One thing that I do, actually, I created at the beginning of every year for the last couple of years. I use Spotify mostly. I delete all my playlists, or all the saved playlists, minus the liked songs, because there's just too many of them. And I started a playlist for the year, so my life and how I want it to feel and move throughout the year. And anytime I hear a new song, I add a song to the list. And so I'm a new song for me, that kind of vibes. And so I try to make sure at least once a day, generally at the beginning of the day, I press play on that playlist, and whatever song plays is going to be the right song. That's just how I look at it. It's going to be the right song. And so humans throughout history, some form of beat, music, something has been kind of a part of our being. So why not type into that ancestral part of us? So that usually helps. That's like deposit number one.
That's wonderful. I love that question, Nikki. For me, it's hiking. I know, Nikki, you love to go out and hike around the Cotswolds. Nikki's from the UK, everyone. For me, and even in the pandemic, I'm very blessed to be living in a town that has wonderful nature trails. They put a lot of their money into creating permanent conservatory or conservation lands. And so going out and just breathing in nature and letting my eyeballs see all the different colors really helps me. Others, it's a form of meditation, taking time to breathe, and affirmations can work. I'd love to hear your advice, viewers. Anything you want to throw into the comment section on how you manage restoring your mental health and building your mental wealth. And it really is a conscious effort. Another thing I love doing, Anthony, first thing in the morning, and in fact, I feel kind of bereft when I don't do this. That's how long I've been doing it. Mm-hmm. Julia Cameron, The Artist's Way, if anybody's read that, she talks about, the morning pages, which is, for a lot of writers, kind of get some of the junk out. Well, for me, it's a way to connect with divine source and just sort of get grounded in my day and express my gratitude for what's happening and ask questions that I can maybe, get some answers to during the day. It just is, a wonderful connection for me. It's only about 15 minutes, but it really restores and helps me manage the day-to-day and the high levels of uncertainty. I mean, look, I've had 4 businesses, folks, and I had 2 kids. So trust me, I'm married 35 years. So there's a lot of wild and crazy things happening. And you put together a mental wealth toolkit. Is there something you offer folks, Anthony, that can help them, or is that part of your mental wealth report? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, and right before we get to that, one more thing on doing those things today. I think it's good to be grounded in something. Like one of the great examples that I picked up, or one of the practices that I picked up, is a practice that I found in Natalie Molina Nino's book Leapfrog, and she talks about writing out your ideal life, like very detailed, like when you wake up, where are you waking up? For me, like one part of it is waking up in my second home in either Italy, Greece, or South Africa on my olive grove, and all going into your day, not a perfect day, and reconnecting with that every time you look at your business and making decisions about your business, and understanding if your business, once your business is out of alignment with that ideal life, you need to check your business. And so that's another way to, I think, make these deposits, and understand how things need to flow.
Right. And we understand the neuroscience behind that visualization, folks. And
Yes.
also, as Anthony said, tapping back into what's the bigger purpose of my doing this business? Because if you're building generational wealth, you really need to remember the why. And we all know that trick.
Yes.
But also, it helps you, as Anthony was saying, really go, whoa, I'm going way over here. That's not where I want to be. Could I be there? Yeah. And that's another thing. As founders, we're pretty talented at a lot of things. Getting back to Steve's whole thing,
Yeah.
is that, how to say no. But with your business, you got to just keep bringing it back to its mission, and remember that your business is here to serve you.
Yes. And that leads me into like your question that I went tangent on. Yeah. So back in, like, for me, like I've always grown up around death. So I don't look at it in a morbid way. And in my life experience, like my grandfather passed on my 10th birthday, 1985. A couple years later, I lost both my grandparents, great grandparents. My youngest brother died by suicide in 2003. And then on his birthday, my dad's mom, my grandmom, died like a year or two later. And what I started to see and feel is that, like, okay, yes, death is a part of life. And so when I started to look at entrepreneurs, as I said, I moved from talking about culture and employee happiness, and then starting to realize, like, the state of the business is dependent solely upon the owner, the founder. And you started to see these stats around in Fast Company and all these magazines around entrepreneurs having like 2x more depression, or 2x or more multiple likelihood of bipolar disorder or substance abuse or anxiety and suicidal thoughts and all this. And so the science person in me looked at the data and said, who wrote the research? And so I looked at the research study and found out that this data was coming from a study done in 2015. Self-reported entrepreneurs, 242 entrepreneurs, 70+% of them identified as Caucasian male. So while the study is relevant to entrepreneurs, it's not necessarily fully relevant to underestimated founders, especially Black founders, people of color. Quite frankly, even like anybody that identifies like it's just one, like, not cis white male.
I don't know. It's like studying breast cancer and you're using all guys.
Yes, exactly. It is cancer, but so you combine, so get that knowledge in me, and then understanding, like, I'm a pragmatic optimist. I used to just be an optimist. I learned to use my powers a little more focused. And so I was like, I'm not going to write in 2019, I'm like, I'm not going to write a book anytime soon. It's just not in me. But what can I, from a business standpoint, put out that's a marketing piece, but also adds tremendous value, or as much value as it can. And so what I did was, like, I know people in the United States. I know people in the UK. Let me do a study on mental wealth. And last year's study was specifically just one question, one study question. The rest were demographic questions around what do underestimated founders do for their self-care. And I gave like a list of like 14 things that I actually had sourced from different Twitter or LinkedIn or just talking to friends. And through that study, I found out that the entrepreneurs that reported, so to give context, 179 entrepreneurs, 85% from the US, 15% from the UK, majority self-reported as woman, or being a woman. And so what I learned is that the top 5 things that they reported were time with close friends, Netflix, Hulu, streaming, whatever, movie, reading books, working out, and travel. And the reason why I wanted, the other reason why I wanted to do the study is because it's our peers telling us what we do. So at any point in time when, if you or I share something with a founder, like, hey, practice self-care, what does that mean? Well, here's what it looks like. Here's what our peers are doing. So that's how that came to be.
I love that. I put the link in the comment sections, folks, for the viewers watching live, and I will have that link in the show notes as well, so you can check it out. Thank goodness you did that, because so often information is being skewed based on a certain race, i.e. white male Caucasian. And thank you for going deeper into what's important. And so what were some of the challenges that the underrepresented founders expressed that they were going through? Was it mental illness? Was it different eating disorders?
Yeah,
trying to eat to soothe or drink, or I don't know. What did you learn from that?
Good question. So the study was focused solely on the self-care habits.
Okay.
And so this year, actually, we're doing the deeper dive.
Yeah.
And we're kicking off this year, but it's because it's going to be so intensive. Yeah. But just anecdotally seeing posts, public posts, but also comments from friends and just founders that are reaching out of the blue, you see that some of the biggest challenges are things like loneliness, anxiety, not being able to tap into their inner champion, so experiencing externally what people call imposter syndrome. Yeah. And then the systemic things, the fact of lack of venture capital funding is more than a joke. It's actually
it's awful.
It's awful. Yeah. Which I'm glad, but at the same time, I'm glad in response to that, in response to the money issue, you see people like Natalie Menino. Right. And Arlen and even over in the UK, there was or the Nordics, there was a fund just created because of a study done by Unconventional Ventures. So all of these resources are going in, but from a mental standpoint, the same issues are still there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Asia Atwood, founder of Trello Technologies, folks, woman of color and a member of the LGBTQ community. She just finally gave up trying to raise funds and went to crowdfunding. And there's some wonderful, for folks of color, crowdfunding platforms that are just about raising money for Black founders. There's places to go, and she quickly raised $250,000 for her tech business. Incredibly qualified woman, got nowhere raising money with investment funds. I'm also going to throw into the comment threads here and in the show notes, you've got to follow Anthony on Twitter. He's always having these conversations. It's my favorite social media bar, but it's like people are there with their drinks and having meaningful conversations. It's not all political slamming, awful language type, it's thoughtfulness. And that's where, the frustration that underrepresented founders are expressing, that they're not even seen. And when I, help folks with their pitch decks, I often talk about the unconscious bias or conscious bias that's there. And, part of your building your mental wealth so that you have a strong investment in your mental health is really understanding that bias and working it, leveraging it, bringing the conversation back to the goals of, of the vision that you're sharing with your business, and, trying to compartmentalize your frustration and anger with the preventative questions you're getting instead of the positive questions that the white males get. And honestly, it's like, folks just don't know. And since the pandemic, Anthony, the investment in women founders and BIPOC and LGBTQ founders is dropped back to 2016, 2017 numbers, which means like nothing. It's just awful, even with all this awareness that's kicked in recently. Let's talk about you have a favorite quote, which is every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. And I'm going to throw in and jump on and with mine, which is comparison is the thief of joy. Mm-hmm. So you talk about your favorite quote and I'll talk about mine.
Yeah, I love that. I used to love it because it was a quote when I worked at the bars. We'd play the song Closing Time by Semisonic. And so gotta go wherever your next chapter leads you. But as I look at it in life, it's kind of this fluid. There's times when life is fluid. There's times when life is like a hard transition, kind of like 2010. And so when I look at, the new beginnings and endings, even right now, we look like we as humanity are living through a beginning and an end, pre-pandemic, pandemic, post-pandemic. Yep. And so at the beginning of the year, when this all hit, for me, that's the mindset I'd taken. And so when you give yourself the opportunity to understand that the backdrop is going to be, things are always going to be beginning and ending, you understand and look at the world through a different lens. So this year, like with the pandemic, I've actually had more speaking gigs than I've ever had in a year, paid and free. But at the same time, I've had, solid place to live and instead of moving around being a digital nomad. And I think it's the beauty of setting context that allows you to understand like what's happening now. Live long enough. That's the other thing. You live long enough, you see.
Right. And I agree with that so much. And I've heard a lot of stories coming out of 2020. So while all of this, mind-blowing events are happening and a lot of businesses are blowing up, there's been pivoting that's been happening. And Napoleon Hill has a wonderful quote, which is within every kernel or within every moment filled with adversity, I'm paraphrasing, obviously, is a kernel, a golden seed of opportunity. And so,
I love that.
And so that's what I think I've seen a lot of folks having happen, Anthony, during 2020, is while there's an emotional upheaval as perhaps a beloved business is coming to an end and it's just so painful, but then, or perhaps you were on a certain trajectory that was so wonderful and so meaningful, and all of a sudden it's like, and you're going off this way, but there's something delicious about that pathway too.
Yes.
Who knew?
Yes. And I think that's the beauty of it, right? Like the world that exists today, we get it. We're in it. You mask up wherever you are. If you look at the wave is still London's just coming, or UK is just coming out of their lockdown. Whatever round of lockdown. Mm-hmm. But you look the world post-pandemic, the only people that have ever experienced a post-pandemic world are the people that lived through the Spanish flu. Otherwise, everybody else is just guessing. I can pontificate all day long about hey, this is what you need to do. But it's a practice, it's a guess, it's an experiment based on looking at the world without the rules of the current world.
That's right. And, I was talking about the comparison is the thief of joy. When we look around us and compare ourselves to somebody who's thriving, whose business is growing, you're just going to feel like crap, right?
Yes.
And finding ways to shift the mindset is so important. Do you have any thoughts around that, Anthony?
Yes. One, comparison is a natural thing. We do it. It's a human. Anybody says they don't look at somebody and compare on some level. I mean, sometimes you go overboard. Sometimes you're like, oh, if you compare yourself to your peers, oh, this is where I can be. And especially if you're trying to figure out how to level up. But yeah, it is truly a thief of joy when you get outside of looking at who you are. So things to help that are taking time to seriously, what do you want? Back to that example of your ideal world, your ideal day. do you understand, if you say you want $1 billion business, do you understand the work that it takes to get there? Or do you want a $100,000 business that has monthly and annual recurring revenues? I think it's getting grounded in that, based upon, and that answer is based upon who you are,
Right.
and what your talents are, and the vision of what you want to, and direction of the impact you want to make on the world.
Exactly. That self-awareness is so important. And boy, you think you might know yourself and then you launch a business. You'll learn a whole lot more about yourself, good, bad, ugly, you name it, it's there. That's why you don't want to be going alone, folks. Stay in touch with Anthony and with me, share your stories, have mentors you can call. Family members, it's a little tough because for them, it's just too close. And a lot of times they're not cut out for the entrepreneurship ride. So it's kind of like watching a train wreck for them about to happen.
And your partners too. Like exactly. Your partner does, unless they're an entrepreneur, they can empathize, but they can't truly relate.
No, they just can't. So be sure to get those people in your life that can really help you around that. And I know that you have mental wealth trainings.
Yes.
Do you still have that, or talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So 2019, and then kind of headed into 2020, it was, let me do virtual. I always thought about doing virtual trainings, specifically for entrepreneurs. And at the beginning of the year, I had private clients and then group clients. And so at the beginning of the year, that all kind of hit pause. And then actually in the middle of the year, because of everything that happened with the, quite frankly, racist in the United States, I had opportunities to actually use the training that I have for entrepreneurs, but for Black employee resource groups, for a few companies. And I found that very fulfilling. But as I move forward, that may be one-off, but mostly when it comes to trainings, it's doing the group trainings with entrepreneurs or one-on-one private coaching with entrepreneurs. And when I say founder, quite frankly, you start a business, somebody pays you for a product, a service, a creation, you're a founder. Semantics when you get into tech world, but like you're a founder. That's how I look at it.
Absolutely. I don't care if you're serving just your family or the community. You don't have to be a unicorn. You put a shingle out and you're getting paid for services. You are a founder, and those challenges are on a micro level, and they're just as important as the big macro level for the larger businesses.
And that's why even in the report and in the study, the upcoming study, is that I very clearly state that out. And so the data is about all of us that are going through this struggle. And being able to understand that, one, you're not alone in the journey of having challenges to your mental health, and two, like, we're out there. And a quick action item for people to be able to use is, yes, LinkedIn is great. To complement LinkedIn, I'd say get on Twitter and create private lists. You can add people to private lists.
So key.
Well, yeah, because if you look at my profile on Twitter, I don't follow a lot of people, and who knows how many people follow my musings. But I have a list of people who fund underestimated founders. I have like 1,000+ underestimated founders from around the world, and so I can tune in to get like the heartbeat of what's happening.
That's right, and that keeps you at the top of your game as you finish up 2020. What does 2021 look like for you?
2021 looks like, at the start of the year, we publish the results from the 2020 study. That helps lead me to seeking and applying for SBIR. So in the US, it's Small Business Innovation Research grants and fundings, non-dilutive, meaning nobody takes equity funding, to pull from the study potential business businesses that I can create. So again, Aware Catalyst is a platform, is my umbrella from which I can create multiple businesses. Having many or several, I call them mental wealth salons throughout the world, or at least in the US, UK, EU, and then the Nordic region. So like Nordic is Sweden, Norway, Finland, that area. Yes, there are Black folks, people of color there, immigrants.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah. And then I think I'm for me, like I want to take 2 months off and do whatever I want. So that means whatever my annual goal is for 2021, that means it needs to happen in 10 months. And so, but that's my decision. That's the way I want to like have my business be a part of my life. Yeah.
And speaking it out to the world, folks, it really helps your brain, especially when you ask your brain, why, what, where type of questions. It goes to work for you, and all of a sudden opportunities bubble up, and you're like, oh, it's reactive something or other in the brain. I can't remember what it's called, but it's neuroscience at its best.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. And you've been, the fact that you still want to be an entrepreneur after your first 3 businesses taught you so much, but now, you're finding your sweet spot. What is like the one mind shift that you use that really helps you when you're feeling inadequate, when you're feeling founder doubt, when you are really experiencing that moment where you're like, this founder journey is really, really hard. Where do you go in your head to get you back on track and on purpose?
Where do I go to get back on track?
Yeah, mindset hack.
Yeah. So first I want to say I think I'm privileged because I have a gene in me that allows me to see the good in every situation, even if it's like the worst situation. And I say that an example is like last fall or last February, I had a pulmonary embolism, so blood clot in my lungs. I'm glad, but I looked at it. I'm like, oh, at least I passed out in a public place. And then, I got the nerd, the doctor version of me, like got to see the clot and all this. So again, that's a piece of privilege that I have, and I was born with. But from a practice you can do, it's truly remembering who you are. And the way to do that, and I've seen it done in multiple ways, but it's to keep a list of your receipts, as Mandela, Schumacher, Hodge Dixon would say, and Founder Jim. Shout out to Founder Jim. But it's remembering who you are. There's times I forget all of that experience that we talked about today. And then I'm like, wait a minute, I've been around for this long. I've had these cool jobs. I've had these experiences. I've impacted people because they've said it, not because I think I've impacted them. So it's remembering who you are and the beauty of the great things that you've done. And it's loving those things, and it's picking one and just letting your mind go back to like, oh, that was so awesome. I did so great.
Outstanding advice. Seriously, that's unbelievable. Take that in, viewers, founders. That is another wonderful mind hack to help us find a way to, and again, it's looking at your receipts. Oh yeah, and I did this. I have a Pinterest board of testimonials, the random ones where people thank me out of the blue. And I'm like, say what? And so I capture it and I put it on there for those moments when I'm feeling a little,
yeah.
And such good advice, Anthony. Any last thoughts for folks as I wrap up?
I think that you should take the time to honor yourself, because you can't honor your craft unless you honor yourself.
Wonderful. Thank you. Beautiful words of wisdom. I'm so grateful you joined us today to help us really bank our mental wealth by focusing on our mental health and building, the muscles that we need to continue on as founders and bring our best forward and our full expression, while understanding that there are no guarantees, folks. It's the possibilities that keeps us going every day with our businesses so that we can, serve the world while serving ourselves. It's an interesting balance, and you've made it an enjoyable conversation. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you, Ande.
And viewers, my gosh, thank you for tuning in and bringing your deliciousness to the conversation, even if it's one that you're having in your head. I'm so grateful that you were here and tuned in. If you have any questions for me or for Anthony, reach out. I'll have all the ways you can reach Anthony in the show notes. For those live viewers, I shared his Twitter handle at Real Anthony, the Anthony Ware. Yes, there we go. Anyway, it's there for you to grab and follow him, because he'll answer questions right there on the Twitter feed. He's amazing. For those of you who watch the replay, I am sincerely grateful that you tuned into this conversation with Anthony around mental health and building mental wealth. Please take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And then, of course, hey, we talk about not going it alone. Feel free to reach out and have a conversation with me. This is how I serve folks. Right here, you can get me by the minute. I will talk to you for 5, 10, 15 minutes. It's all good. And we can have a conversation and help you with your business, because I don't want you to be out there alone. And you can book a 15-minute conversation right here with me, free, to find out if we're in alignment and if we're a good fit for each other. I'd love to learn more about you and your business. Okay, this Friday, December 4th, wait to see who's joining me right here on Startup Life Live. It is Christy Pitts. And Christy, folks, is the general partner of Backstage Capital. And she is talking to us about when to raise money for your startup. And you got to know that for over 3 years, Christy has been working side by side with Arlen Hamilton of Backstage Capital, assisting in sourcing and investing in startups led by women, people of color, and LGBTQ founders, helping to bring the firm's total investment portfolio to more than 150 companies. Oh my gosh. I know Anthony would be telling you too, because they're good buds on Twitter. Christy is pure deliciousness. I mean, she's got a gift for the camera and relaying information. I'm so excited to have her join me. And hey, you can get alerts whenever I have a new show every Tuesday and Friday. Who's going to be joining Ande on the Startup Life Live show? Join my meetup group right here, Startup Life Live in all caps, so you get an alert when I post a new show. Oh, so grateful that you tuned in. I'm just going to say hi, a few more. Thank you, Mia. It was so good. It was just such a great conversation with Anthony. He really brings out so many wonderful pieces and thoughtful advice. You are very welcome, David. So grateful that you tuned in as well. And Widleen, so great. I'm just also so happy to see all the wonderful events you had over the Shop Small with your beautiful fusion dolls. Yay. And folks, just so you know, Mia's coming and joining me December 22nd. So that is a person you do not want to miss. Just putting you a little heads up there. And in the meantime, everyone, stay focused, stay healthy, stay safe, and remember, you've got this. You really do. I believe in you. And I'll see you next time. Cheers, everyone. Mwah!